Hello everyone, it's Augustine, with a much better mic now, obviously, which means you can now recover from the absolute assault I committed on your earlobes in my last video. Go check that out, by the way, if you haven't. I promise the script makes up for the fact that it sounds like I'm recording from Alistair's old studio. Anyways, back to the meat of the video. Yummy. With the wrap-up of Hazbin Hotel Season 2, there's been quite the heaping helping of interesting discourse surrounding the show. Some good, some, not so good, but interesting nonetheless. However, there's been a particular line of discourse that I've been picking up on, especially since the airing of Episode 6, aka Scream Rain, aka the Chaggie episode. Chaggie has been a source of somewhat contentious discourse for a while now, with their relationship in Hazbin Hotel Season 1 consistently being called boring or sauceless. Now, obviously, I disagree with that if my Twitter bookmarks are anything to go by. Oh, hi Rosé! How are you doing? Yeah, me too. But that's neither here or there. What I really want to address is the more pointed discourse about Chaggie that has especially been aimed towards Season 2, Episode 6 that I feel like I have particular contention to. The argument being that Chaggie is toxic, and that this episode is an example of said toxicity. Now, this discussion can go several ways, especially since none of the supporting arguments for this come from one person or from one source. Rather, these are arguments that I have heard multiple times from all different types of people within the fandom. Hell, even people who like Chaggie. But so far, I've isolated the arguments for this to a few core tenets, all of which seem to be focused around the moments leading up to Easy and the song itself. So that's the framework we'll go into addressing these tenets with, and I'll go through why I think each one is misguided. 1. Charlie's remorse for her self-centered behavior comes out of nowhere. She doesn't show any guilt beforehand, and it comes off as her running to Vaggie because she sees no other choice out of the situation she's dug herself in, rather than actual displayed concern for her actions. Oh boy, let's get into the rebuttal. After Episode 5, Charlie believes that Vaggie doesn't view her efforts or goals as worthy or realistic, or at least that's what she's gaslighting herself into believing to protect her ego and self-worth. We can see this line of thinking reflected in their little back and forths in the next episode, with Charlie consistently bringing up Vaggie's mistake from Episode 5 almost as if to compare her own decision-making to hers. There's a pretty good Georgia Dow video on how, despite this petty line of argumentation, Charlie and Vaggie show some green flags for each other here regardless, but I feel like I would just be parroting her talking points if I went in depth about all that, so I would just say go watch that video. It's pretty good, even if I end up hard disagreeing with one of her main points in it, as you'll see later. Anyways, Vaggie and Charlie, with her little chip on her shoulder, make off to argue with Carmilla Carmine, where Vaggie is finally able to argue her own reasons for why she thinks the hotel is the main solution to the problems all the characters have been facing, upon which you can actively see Charlie's demeanor change in real time, as if she's being reminded that, oh yeah, this girl does believe in me, actually. But the tone quickly shifts as Carmilla Carmine inadvertently triggers some particularly awful trauma that Vaggie holds, leaving her literally too stunned to speak. Something that Charlie picks up on immediately, upon which she almost instinctually gets protective of her and speaks on her behalf. And Carmilla says something somewhat poignant.
Lilith is gone. Her beliefs don't matter. What matters is war is coming and I am choosing the winning side.
Something Charlie really did not want to hear, as it triggers her to immediately go back to petty squabbling. Something that Vaggie, understandably, just doesn't respond to. It's all of this in tandem that actually gets Charlie to reflect for a second, the guilt and conflicting thoughts apparent on her face. It's all of this together when Vaggie is finally too emotionally dissociated to further engage in and enable this childish line of argumentation that Charlie is able to finally understand just how badly she's messed up. To finally understand that this isn't about some petty ego duel between her and Vaggie. It never has been. It's never been about Vaggie undervaluing her or her dream. Rather, this is about her emotionally and intellectually neglecting the concerns and issues of her partner, who has been incredibly supportive of her despite her own self-sabotaging anxiety. It's kind of why I have issues with Charlie's characterization this season outside of this episode and the episodes after it. Charlie is naive and self-centered, yes, but that naivety and self-centeredness ultimately stems from her morality, coming from her idea of a world that her mom would have wanted, and her anxiety stemming from tying her own self-worth to the realization of that world. And not because she's just that innocent, oblivious, and, frankly, stupid? It's also why I actually really like this episode. It's like the narrative suddenly remembered how to characterize a person like this. Compassionate yet selfish yet compassionate. It's why Vaggie loves her in the first place. It's why she finds that naive compassion so cute and charming most of the time, and why she is willing to easily forgive her. It's because she needs her deep down. Charlie was and is the one person in heaven or hell to show her that the world didn't have to be terrible all the time. That there were people who were dreamers and believed in a beautiful world and were willing to put effort into achieving that world. In fact, it's when she's in that headstrong dreamer-like state that she shines the brightest, both in the narrative and in Vaggie's eyes. When she embodies the best parts of Lilith and Lucifer that inspires others, including a cynical girl like Vaggie, to develop a brighter, more empathetic worldview. A worldview that enables people to let go of their inner demons, and come together. And while I like Hear My Hope, that song probably would have hit a lot harder if the show decided to focus on this main emotional and thematic core of, their main character for the entirety of the season, instead of sidelining it for the V's. Up until finally giving it its proper attention in the last few episodes. But I digress. What Charlie realizes here is that it's not just about her and her mom anymore.
Lilith is gone.
She doesn't owe it to Lilith to make sure that the hotel succeeds. She owes it to everyone else, especially Vaggie. Everyone has been falling apart into old habits without that headstrong dreamer side of her, because she's been neglecting them in favor of addressing her own mommy issues. So she fesses up, she concedes. She, for a moment, finally displaces her value as a person away from her mom and onto the person that matters most in her life. Número dos. Cha-cha-cha. Charlie never says the words, "I'm sorry," to Vaggie. Out of all the arguments I've heard, this one is probably the most, what's the word? Oh yeah, not good. Speaking of words, I feel like this argument mainly stems from people perhaps maybe getting a bit too hung up on characters saying the exact unproblematic thing. That's not to say that I don't understand where the sentiment is coming from. Decades of harmful representation have not painted lesbian relationships in the best of light, so I get why people are vigilant, but at the same time, I feel like this mindset can often come at the cost of portraying how people actually realistically talk about and convey their emotions. Especially in interpersonal relationships where people can intuitively understand what a person is trying to say via their actions and known behavioral patterns, without them necessarily outright telling them. Words can help, but actions speak a lot louder than words. In fact, good faith actions themselves are what enables words to begin with. What enables the facilitation of bigger and more nuanced discussion amongst loved ones. Charlie doesn't literally need to say the words, "I'm sorry." Her remorse is evident in her behavior and demeanor, something that Vaggie is already intimately familiar with and already picks up upon the second she sees the blanket fort. It's evident in the gestures, in the gentle touches, the subtle expressions that say so much more than words ever could. Nummer 3. Det finns inte ens en svensk karaktär i Hazbin Hotel. Jag vet inte varför jag skulle. Vaggie and Charlie don't have a proper discussion about their relationship issues. And Charlie doesn't properly get to air all of it out because Vaggie completely cuts her off just so they can have their sex song and skip over that entirely. This is probably the argument I have the most personal contention with, and the one that'll probably take the most amount of yapping in this whole video. So buckle up, Dorothy, cause Hazbin Twitter is going bye-bye. I feel like the major issue with this argument fundamentally stems from the idea that Easy is entirely separate from Vaggie and Charlie's discussion about Charlie's anxiety and not just a continuation of it. I think where people get hung up here is a misunderstanding of the lyrics, "Shut up, you know that I love you, but that's enough of the spiral." People interpret this as Vaggie shutting down the discussion altogether, but it's actually her preventing Charlie from participating in what I and others may recognize as unproductive venting. That might be a bit confusing to some people, as typically we associate being able to vent as purely positive, but it's actually a bit more nuanced than that. From what I have been able to research and going off of my own anecdotal experiences, venting and airing out your problems is typically good when it's more productive and leads to a better, more nuanced unpacking of your issues and helps alleviate and address concerns and stress. But it can also turn completely counterproductive when it instead turns into unhealthy rumination that only worsens your mood in the end and overwhelms the person you're talking to. Charlie's little dialogue here starts as the healthy former but then shifts into the unhealthy latter, as she lets the worst of her anxieties take control of her. Something that Vaggie picks up on and shuts down immediately, instead pulling her focus away to calm her nerves down. But even in the context of this dance, the song's main focus is still on Vaggie and Charlie's relationship. Primarily, the song is about addressing the root of the problem in the first place, mainly Charlie's anxiety. The opening verse of Easy starts off with Vaggie directing Charlie's attention away from her doom spiral and instead distracting her by giving her a form of relief that can put her in a better frame of mind to better address this issue. It then goes on about introducing the thesis of the song, that Charlie doesn't need to spiral, that Charlie doesn't need to engage in self-sabotaging behavior, because at the end of the day, all that the girls need to do is have trust in each other, to listen to and value each other. That so long as they hold true to these founding principles of their relationship, there is absolutely no situation that they cannot fix or is beyond redemption. I especially like this sequence because it just really gets to what Chaggie is at its core. One misconception I see about Chaggie, even by people who like it, is that it's the typical dynamic of a cynical character meeting an overly positive character, with the positive character helping the cynical character be less pessimistic, while the cynical character helps the overly positive character be more realistic. But that's really only somewhat true when it comes to their relationship. It's just as much about Vaggie being Charlie's ray of sunshine as it is about Charlie being Vaggie's ray of sunshine. A huge part of Charlie's character that I don't really see recognized that much is her inherent neuroticism. For as optimistic as she tries to be, she's incredibly prone to nervous breakdowns, depressive episodes, and mental spirals. Vaggie isn't there to ground her dreams so much as she is there to ground the anxiety and self-doubt that gets in the way of achieving those dreams. To enable that kind yet headstrong and confident potential leader of hell that we get glimpses of every now and then. A person who wholeheartedly believes in her own aspirations and her ability to achieve those aspirations. A person who is able to provide love and acceptance to others because she has already learned to love and accept herself. I feel as though a lot of the discourse surrounding Chaggie's portrayal in this episode comes from a highly tactical approach to writing that I'm starting to notice more and more these days. It's an approach to writing that I'm not particularly fond of, not because it doesn't have its place in storytelling. This can be very good for world-building purposes, for example, but not so great for conveying character emotions or interpersonal dynamics. I think as media consumers, we've lost our ability to interpret the subtleties, the nuances, the subtext, and the things that aren't outright explained to us. Media literacy isn't just about being a big old smarty pants with an English degree. Not to hate on people with English degrees, you guys do important stuff. I mean, way more important than me defending my fucking florbos on YouTube. But media literacy is also a reflection of your inner self, a reflection of how broad or how narrow your own perspective can reach, or where said perspective is coming from. In a way, media analysis is meant to challenge this perspective, to hone it, to learn to further look into the words given to us, or to look beyond them entirely. I wasn't originally going to put this in the script, but I feel like it's maybe important to point out that this applies to queer couples especially. Because like I said earlier, I understand why people are hypervigilant, but maybe that hypervigilance comes from an unintentional and internalized heteronormative perspective, where we employ this highly technical approach to writing because we're paranoid about how to justify ourselves to a straight audience, rather than what representation is supposed to do, which is to humanize us and portray us in a realistic and nuanced fashion that we can see ourselves in. What Vaggie and Charlie have to say and sing to each other is important, but it's not just about the literal words, it's the deeper meaning and sentiment behind those words and the actions that accompany them. It's only through those actions, only through the calming and soul-bonding activity of their dance, that Charlie is able to calm down enough to really acknowledge and affirm Vaggie's concerns, and that Charlie is able to stop an unproductive spiral and get over her own anxieties. finally focusing on what actually matters in the grand scheme of her life. It's through that realistic nuance, through the harsh and soft gestures, the angry, guilty, and loving gazes, the acts of spurning and of service. It's through the emotions that would only be cheapened by some mass elaboration or justification. Emotions that practically every couple, healthy or otherwise, are eventually going to run up against, like anger, guilt, sadness, and remorse. But it's okay. It's really okay. So long as that trust is rebuilt with the emotion that can fix anything, that can redeem anything, that can do anything. And, that's love. Thank you to everyone for watching this video. I know this one was a quickie. I'm trying to do more short form stuff in between the more high production long form stuff, of which you can support the making of both by heading on over to my Ko-Fi, or Coffee. I've heard people pronounce it both ways and I don't know which one is right. While you're over there, you can make a donation, or if you want something in return, a commission from me, if you're into the art stuff. Speaking of the art stuff, you can also see more of my art on TikTok and Tumblr. Anyways, after all that, I gotta run, but I'll see you next time, everyone. Bye!